Usually people invest in classroom.
Any insights, any sharing? What are some of the changes you saw in your industry over the last 5 years? Let's talk about that. Last 5 years. 过去我们看到哪些方面的改变？
Our business, I think the top segment is shrinking.
Top segment is shrinking, so the high end is getting smaller.
Yeah, at least from our industry, we see that actually the local, middle and the lower segment in the last 5 years or even 10 years, they grow. They start to overtake the top segment. And this also, and we stay in the top segment.
Yeah.
We see.
Right.
This kind of shrinking.
Right. So if you're a foreign company, especially if you're a German company, you find that the top segment is actually getting smaller.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a growth of the middle or upper middle segment.
Because we are somehow related with the medical device industry.
Yes.
I believe unless it's a really high technology medical device company like car stocks, they, I think, are still not really afraid about the market in China because so far the local copycat cannot 100% copy their product.
No.
But for most of medical device in China, I think, especially with the strong support from the China government, because the government encourage all the hospitals to buy from local medical device. Even they cannot give official papers that you have to buy from this Chinese made. But somehow they from the tax benefit and some of the support. So this is how I observe in the last 5 years. It has become more and more strong. That's why I say that this top segment is
right. So the top segment is shrinking, more competition from local players, more encouragement to source locally.
Yeah.
Right. Any other changes?
So maybe I can share something from
my
industry. My company, we have a name called Novus International, and we are a company of animal science. Our product is animal nutrition products.
Oh, okay.
So our customers are in China.
Amino acids or?
Amino acids is one of the main products.
Yes.
And we also have some other feed quality products.
Right.
So the the key customers of our company is to the feed company, feed milk company productions.
Yes.
So in the past 5 years, we can see from the government released information that the company registration, the feed production company of China, they shrink and they merge and acquisition. So I think from 20,000 something to around 7,000.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a big change.
Right.
That means our customers grow bigger and bigger, and they are very powerful of negotiation. And
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Very tough for the
Sure, very tough. We also have another client that basically a lot of their cash, a lot of their profits came from amino acids for chicken feed, right, specifically chicken, and sometimes fish as well. And what we saw over the last, we worked with them since 2010, 2011. So their peak was around 2012 to 2014. Right? So this is when animal feed was, amino acids for animals, for chicken, was huge. And then it went flat. Right now it's going down.
Rising high at this.
Yes. So these are some of a lot of fluctuations. The total volume is still huge, is still increasing, especially in that business. There is more and more emphasis, and reason that business got really good in 2012 to 2014 was the government, Chinese government, is looking for alternatives to antibiotics in animals. Right, so you want to reduce the number of antibiotics in animals so that we eat less of antibiotics. So, and to do that is to boost the immune system of the animals. And to boost the immune system of the animals is to get amino acids. So, in human form, vitamin B. Right, so that is what the push for amino acids in animals. And given the state of things in China and the world, we are eating more and more animal food, meat. So the total volume is actually still increasing. But the number of customers is reducing because customers merge. Right? So, and because there are less customers, there is less bargaining power from the sellers. Right? So that's one part. The other thing also, because there was a huge demand in 2012 to 2014 for amino acids for animal feed, there were actually more players that came, more sellers that came into the market during those periods. Then suddenly the market consolidated. So you got more sellers, more competitors, and less customers. Okay, so not a nice place to be in, right?
I appreciate that viewpoint because as I was listening to our colleagues here,
Right.
Our organization has experienced a really sharp uptick in the last like 12 to 18 months.
Wow.
And new market segments have appeared that we've not even considered. So
Right.
our growth has been surprising, but very horizontal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to me, it kind of feels like that some of the things we're doing, I'm very happy about, but it's like they need a little bit more infrastructure. You need to go a little deeper in some areas.
Sure.
But it's all connected to government policy.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, the Ministry of Education released instructions to the school system that drama was now to be added to the curriculum.
Right.
Yet, due to the nature of how schools are run here and the focus on exam scores, they don't want to invest the resources.
Right.
So more people have started coming to my organization to provide drama to the schools.
Right.
This has opened up new market segments that we didn't even anticipate,
Right.
including outside of China.
Sure.
So it's a concern because now I'm a little concerned about, am I propping up all of the expansion we're making?
Yeah.
So when I think about and what's come with this has been a lot more competition.
Yes.
Because since I have been able to build things
So does everybody else.
yes, it's fairly easy.
Yeah.
Right, so that's something I have to think about. In the next 5 years,
Yeah.
considering the history of how these sorts of government policies have gone,
Mm-hmm.
generally, in my experience, and I'm just really speaking in a very general way, when the government issues a policy, it takes some time for the policy to become firm.
Right.
Right? Like when I was warned that I would need a license for my scooter, that was 3 years before they really came down on it, right? So over time, I do predict that the school's need to outsource drama education will diminish greatly.
Right.
That the schools will
Well,
start
do it
to
themselves,
employ
yeah.
their own. Yes.
Yes.
It is a very common practice. I know
Yes.
that there, on more than one occasion when my coaches have gone
Right.
to either a company
Yes.
or a school or whatever, there's often someone there taking careful notes.
Yes.
Because you want to consider,
Yeah.
how much money would I save if our internal people could do
Right. So would you consider, I mean, since we're talking about last 5 years and next 5 years, would you consider something like, why don't you go to step 2 and skip step 1 instead? Step 2 being, go into the schools and say, why don't we train your teachers to do drama?
That's what we're doing right now.
Forget about step 1.
That's actually absolutely what we're doing. We've set up a program to train teachers in what we do.
Right.
And similarly, we took from that idea and we went to our corporate clients and we said, what if we could train your trainers?
Right.
What we do.
Okay, interesting. Right. What about here? What changes have you gone through over the last 5 years?
Yeah,
Nothing changed.
I'm from the the automotive and the vehicle industry.
Yes.
I think probably the last 5 years, for the diesel engine or the construction equipment,
Yes,
and for
yes.
the trucks, as the market was fluctuates
Yes.
dramatically.
Yes.
It's also related to the government's policy.
From combustion to electric vehicles.
Yeah, this is for passenger cars. It's a trend. I think
Yeah.
it's quite obvious that
Mhm.
the trend is going to happen very quickly.
Right.
Have you noticed in your industry a lot of people, instead of automotive, are starting to shift the term mobility or something similar to that?
Yes.
To be more inclusive of the changes that are coming?
What do you mean?
How do you mean by mobility?
Well, okay, like so, one of my clients is a major automotive parts company.
Yeah.
And they're really working at changing their entire mindset, including the branding, instead of automotive parts.
Yeah.
Currently, the word they're toying with is mobility parts.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
The concept is bigger.
Right, it's a bigger
Yeah.
concept because
Okay.
they're forecasting the need of change.
Right. Right. I mean, if you're in automotive, and nowadays we got electric vehicles, we got hybrid vehicles, and we're thinking about Tesla, we're thinking about BYD, right? But the bigger potential is actually buses. Because, no, think about this, if you're in that industry, the problem with electric vehicles is the charging. Because it's not like if your car is out of gas, you just go to a petrol station and pump, and you're fine within 5 minutes, right? But if your electric vehicle is out of power, it's harder to get charged. It's a longer time to get charged, rather, right?
And
So
there's currently not the infrastructure of charging points.
not just charging points. Even if you have charging points, it takes a longer time to get it charged.
Sure.
Right. So that's a big problem.
Yeah,
But-
they have considered solution.
Yeah.
Change the battery very quickly.
Yeah. So instead of charging, you take out battery and put
Yeah,
charge one
you'll
in.
see a share battery stand. You'll scan the QR code, pay through your WeChat wallet, change your battery.
Take out battery, old battery.
If it's extended battery, you change it. That's like
Instead of the
I said,
phone.
Well, that's what the electric bike industry is doing, right?
Yes. So yeah, that's something that's doable. But for buses, it's not a problem because buses you got fixed points. You go from point A to point B. You know how much to charge. And the moment it goes to a depot, you take out an old battery, put in a new battery, the old battery just
Charges
charging.
overnight.
And so basically everything is going on to plan. So that the bigger potential actually for electric vehicles is buses. Right, so that's just something to think about. Everything else that we foresee will happen in the next 5 years. Maybe good news, maybe bad news, but whatever. not everything is bad.
I think we're going to see a major change in the co-working industry. I think it's going to soon morph into the co-living industry.
Right. Okay, so there's more how do you define co-working?
You know, a shared space that you don't necessarily rent solely for yourself.
Okay.
That is managed by an organization.
Sure.
I foresee, okay, consider the young university graduates that are trying to get into like finance or technology in Beijing.
Right.
They accept living in substandard conditions.
Right.
Because it has to be a trade-off because they need to look the part in order to move up in these organizations.
Sure,
So they do
sure.
have to spend money on an iPhone and stuff
Sure.
like that.
Sure.
So they live in really terrible underground dormitories, all right? Now imagine that these people with an entrepreneurial mindset, that they're going to be working in a co-working space. I predict that in the future there's going to be like entire co-living spaces. You will live, you'll have offices, you'll have like basic medical needs,
It's already
basic shopping
happening.
needs, basic education.
It's already
needs.
happening.
I'm worried about that. I think it's going to further damage human connection.
Really? Okay. It's really happening. People work and live and everything in one building. May not be in the same capsule, but in the same building. Right? So that's happening in Taicang of all places. There's a German center in Taicang. Right? So you have offices below and apartments on top. So your travel to the office is just press the lift and there you go. So you got shared offices and get shared apartments. Yeah.
Sounds terrible.
It's already happening. It's already happening. Anything else that we foresee in our market in the next 5 years? In terms of yes.
我用中文讲。
你用中文讲话，我来翻译我的。
我们这个医疗市场有一个很明显变化，就是说，也跟其他行业可能有点类似，就是跨界非常也比较，就是越来越明显。
跨界比较明显。
对，以往的客户可能就是说，比方我们是医疗市场嘛，我们做内科镜的，以前做内科镜做好就可以了，现在已经不行了，你必须那个相关的这个医疗里面都要涉及到，否则是别人把你已经打包进去了，所以这个趋势非常的明显。
Okay, now people want to have a package instead of the product. So they want the full thing. So in the past it's like you have endoscopic mirrors. Now they want the mirror to the system, to the screen, to that is connected to everything else.
Yeah, what I call a turnkey in the 90s.
Turnkey. Now it's all integrated, right? They want to integrate to the entire operating theater, and everything is all interconnected somehow. right? So that's a trend, right? And the unfortunate thing， 德资企业在这方面又反应比较慢。So for typical German companies are slow in adapting to connectivity type technologies. That's the challenges. Now the key thing to this is, as salespeople, as business people, do we like to change or do we don't like to change? 作为商务的角度，我们是喜欢改变还是不喜欢改变？
Depends.
You like change? Depends.
大部分人不太喜欢改变。
Well, yeah, in a way it depends. Well, if I don't have any customers, then I like change because that means I get more customers. But then again, if I have a lot of customers, no, I don't want change because I want to keep my customers. So generally, people in business don't like changes generally, right? But what we are doing here is kind of do a reflection that, number one, the market has been changing, right? In the past 5 years, for better or worse, the market has been changing. Number two, the market will keep on changing and probably changing faster, right? So that's last 5 years and next 5 years. And the question to not just everyone here, but everybody in the world, is if the external environment is changing, are you also changing? Or the other question is, we all hate to change, but then again, if you are changing slower than the external environment, what's going to happen? 如果你的变化比这个外部的变化还慢， you die. Right? It's a quote from Jack Welch, right? So the quote was, if the rate of change internally is slower than the rate of change externally, then the end is near. Right? The underlying words are the end is near. You'll be put out of business. So this is part of why we're.
It also depends. I think sure you need to follow the market change,
Yeah.
but your company always should have your own focus.
Sure,
You
sure,
cannot
sure.
just change when everyone change, you also change. Then
Sure,
you,
sure,
there's
sure.
no direction.
Yeah, you need to.
And maybe I don't get the market for these 3 years,
Yeah.
but I for sure I could get in 5 years.
Sure.
That's I think also.
Sure.
In general, I fully agree that we should adapt according to the
Sure.
needs from market. Yeah.
We also don't want to go into a state where there is constant change. Because when there's constant change, it's not change, it's called turmoil. 不是变革，是动荡. And so that confuses everybody, and there's a lot of waste of resources and all that. So we want to know what's going on in the market, and something like Kurt is doing. Maybe we don't want to go into step 1, which is what everybody else is doing. Maybe we can just go straight into step 2.
Yeah.
Right. So we foresee what's going to happen next and what happens next. We are looking at 2 steps ahead. Right.
We spend a lot of time in our. Well, what I do, just to let you know, is my company is about 即兴表演, improvisational theater, and most of my work is in training facilitation, programs I design and deliver through directions for CJ. And a lot of the work that I do is change management in VUCA, but what we're focusing on right now we call self-disruption. We're actually looking at ways to affect change before the change, to explore what could happen.
Right.
So when you talk about going ahead to step 2 and skipping step 1, we're looking at ways to skip to step 5.
Right.
You know, we're trying to, it's not so much about predicting,
Sure.
but yes, I agree with you. A state of constant change is turmoil.
Yeah.
But I think, like everything else, it's a balance.
Yes.
You know, you'll have moments of peace and moments of war.
Right.
So what we're trying to do, like, for example, one of the things that we're working with a client recently that they brainstormed was that given the current tension in the world,
Right.
and the fact that we're about to face the first advance in nuclear buildup in decades,
Right.
people, one client realized that they need to focus on the baby goods market,
The baby what?
baby products.
Oh, baby. Okay.
Because historically, at this particular time in world tension, when it is about, you know, coming this close to military action, there is a boom in birth.
Right. When there's war, there people make babies.
So it made us start looking ahead to early childhood education.
Interesting. Okay. Right. So the people who supports war are not people who sell arms. It's people who sell baby products.
Well, people
Right.
who sell anything really.
Right. So that's to give it a background as in to think about how prepared you are for change. And before we go into the details, there's a simplified version of what change management is. And there are different models. This is a very, very simple version. The first step to want to make people change, especially salespeople change. Right? Of all people, salespeople, especially successful salespeople, hate to change. Because successful salespeople are successful in their old ways. They don't want to change to a new way because it represents discomfort, it represents changing old habits, it also represents risk of trying something new, and then your old customers may just go away. So salespeople, especially the good ones, usually don't like to change. So if you want to convince someone who doesn't like to change to make the change, the first step is to tell them why they need to change. And this is part of the why. What if you don't change now? And the challenges that we are looking at in the next part is what are we going to change into? Right? This is a part 2 of changes. So the first part is why we need to change, because if we don't have to change, then we don't have to change. So the first thing is, do we have a strong, compelling reason why we need to change? Right? But that's not enough. The next step is people are thinking about okay, we are convinced we should change, but what are we going to change into? What is the final destination? Okay, that is part 2. Part 3, which we will not cover here, we will talk about it a little, but not so much, is how are we going to make the change? That's a very, very simple version of change management. Why we need to change, what are we going to change into, and how are we going to make the change, right? How usually is done in trainings, and the mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to change management is to teach people the how. So it can be a sales training program, it can be a management training program, it can be any kind of training. Training basically, it's how you do something new or do something, learn new skills, right? Those are the how, and hows are important. But if you don't tell people why you need to change and what are you going to become, usually you get a lot of pushback on the how. People don't want to learn the new skill, or they'll find that the new skill, oh, okay, this is interesting, this is fun, this is exciting, but they are not using it in work. Right, so the how becomes the last part. So this for this morning is more of the why and what. So the first thing about the sales challenges in a VUCA world, just in case we're wondering what is VUCA, it's a bit small over here. The main 4 letters, VUCA, the V is volatility, volatile, meaning things can swing from one extreme to the other extreme. Right, suddenly the market is booming. Suddenly the market collapses. Right? In Chinese, it's like 哈一下一拥而上，再哈一下一拍两散。Right? So it's a boom bust cycle, and it's occurring very rapidly. Right? So that's volatility. Used for uncertainty, you really don't really know what's going to happen in the future. You can make a guess of what's happening, but you are not that sure. Right? Uncertainty makes your forecast very difficult. Right? Are you going to hit targets next month? Maybe the month after next, maybe not this year. What will be your best-selling product? What you think is your best-selling product at the beginning of the year may not be the same in the middle of the year, not just about at the end of the year. Right? So there's a lot of uncertainty of what will happen in the market. It makes long-term planning very difficult. Right? Things like long-term planning usually is, do we need to make a 10 million investment in certain kinds of machinery, in a new plant, in new something, right? If I make a 10 million USD investment, usually the payback period is about 5 to 10 years, right? But will this investment be relevant in 5 years' time? We don't know. So it makes investments very difficult as well. C is for complex. It's not just unpredictable, but there will be more people involved, more factors involved, government policies, what I call different market trends, suddenly people from a different industry come into the industry and take away your business, right? So if you think about who is the biggest taxi company in the world, it's not Uber, it is Didi. Didi is bigger than Uber, right? So, and the thing about Didi is that it does not even own one taxi. Right? So that's it. Uber doesn't own a single taxi. Who is the biggest retailer in the world? Alibaba. Right? And until recently, now it's got its Hema Dian. Right? Until very recently, it doesn't have a single store. It has its own store. Right? So this is the people from somewhere else. And if you run supermarkets, who will be, or who is, not will be, who is the biggest threat to people like Carrefour, like Walmart? It's not Jingdong, it's Alibaba. With Hema and everything. So in the past, if you order something, if I want it quick, I go to the store, right? If I can wait a few days, I order online and wait for the quality, right? Now Alibaba can do same-day delivery. They'll identify you where is the nearest physical store, and you can place an order, and it can be delivered within 2 hours. Okay, so this is things are changing, and your competitors may not be the ones that you think are your competitors. Your competitors can be just someone from somewhere, and this takes away your business. Right, so that's a complex part. You have complexity in regulations, markets, competitors. In the sales scenario, you have complexity in the different kinds of people involved in decision making. Right, the bigger the deal, usually the more people will be involved in making or influencing the decision. And then there's ambiguous. In sales, specifically, you may have a good customer, a big customer, a great customer, and then suddenly that customer becomes your competitor. Right? So this is happening because your customer suddenly has got a merger and acquisition. They decided to buy your competitor. So they can't use your products, but they bought your competitor, so they become vertical integrated. Right, so your biggest customer can be your competitor in one fine day. So there's who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. The people that you think are competitors may not be competitors in the future. The people that you think are your customers may be your competitors. So it's really hard to tell. VUCA, by the way, came from the American military. Right? It came from the American operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. In a terrain basically can change anytime, right? In a place where they really don't know what's going on, so there's a lot of uncertainty. They are not experienced in those whether it's terrain or political situations, the place they operate in. It's also very complex, as in who really is the boss of the country, no one knows, right? And who will be the boss of the country the next day, no one knows either. So it's very complex, and it's also very ambiguous. Your allies can be your enemies the next day, your enemies can be your allies the next day, and it's very, very ambiguous in that sense. So it started as a military term, talking about the future of war. But it's also being used in business as well, more and more, in the sense that the business situation that we are in tend to also be more VUCA, right? This is the new reality. So with regards to sales, some of the things that salespeople need to do, your customers' needs and expectations have changed, right? Based on what we've discussed, what happened in the last 5 years, what will happen in the next 5 years. The customers, the same customers, the needs and expectations changed. Okay. Number two, the types of customers changed. So we have also worked with companies that in the past sell only to European/American customers. 就有些企业他们的客户只有欧美企业。Right? Over the last 5 years, the European/American type customers have fallen by 50%. And then in place are the local customers. right? So the customer profiles change, the type of the needs, background, and so on changes as well. Competitors also change. What you thought are your competitors may not be the case anymore. And the things you sell change. So like endoscopic scopes and all that, in the past we are just selling the scope. Now you sell the whole thing. Right? So the solutions that you provide changes as well. The change can be expanding and it can be contracting. So some cases people want to buy the whole system. Some other cases, like we have this other customer as well, they manufacture car seats. Right? Now, car seats usually comes with the railing. Right? You adjust your seat to the front, to the back, and all that, the railing for the car seat. And they're really good with the railings. So it can be what I call manual railings, or it can be automated electronic railings. They're very good with railings. And the customers, in order to cut costs, tell them that, we just want to buy the railings from you because you're really good at that. The seats itself, we can source from a cheap Chinese manufacturer because it's just a very simple seat. Right, so this is it can change either way. Some solutions became bigger, some became smaller. So how does this impact sales? Certain things that we see more and more. Projects suddenly get cancelled. You're talking to the customer says we're buying, and at the very last minute, sorry, project cancelled, we're not buying. Right, so there's things that are getting more and more. Sales forecast, because of unpredictability, uncertainty, sales forecast becomes more and more unreliable. It's hard to really understand what will happen in the next 3 months. You may know what's going to happen next month, but 3 months later, 6 months later, getting more and more unreliable. What sales managers sometimes need to do is to review sales forecasts every month, because you don't know what's going to happen 6 months later. So the only thing you can do is, as we get more information, as we get more clarity, we need to tweak or we need to adapt the sales figures. Right. So this is the new reality. Buying decision making becomes more complex, in the sense that in the past, when we talk about complex buying decisions, it's usually you need to take care of the purchasing manager, you need to take care of the user, you need to take care of maybe someone in R&D, you need to take care of the boss, and so on. So you need to take care of different people in the complex buying decision. That was the past. In the future, what the additional complexity is, the buying decision makers may not be belonging to the same company. These companies are becoming what I call more and more fragmented. People are working with outsourced partners more and more. So when they make decisions, it's not one company that makes a decision. It's a few companies coming together, each one doing a different thing, and make a buying decision. So that makes it even more complex. And of course, your customers may suddenly become your competitors, right? So this is some things that will impact salespeople. Like I said, I'll share the slides so you don't have to take down everything. So if these are what is happening in VUCA, the next question is, what do we need to do as salespeople, right? So far, there has been a lot of discussion on how do you lead, how do you manage, how do you run an organization in VUCA? 我们过去都是说，你在这个动荡不安的这个情况，你怎么去更好的管理、领导你的团队，或者是管理你的公司？Now the question is, VUCA also impacts sales. So we're looking at salespeople. Now, generally, what do customers expect from salespeople? So number one, customers, and by the way, this is pre-VUCA, this is some time ago. This is a study that is made by this little company called Charlie. They're a sales competency company that does a lot of research on what works for sales and what doesn't work. This is research that is made over, I think it's